In the first Nutrition, Fiction, Fact, and Crap video, I said it was important to learn the basics of nutrition and to educate yourself, starting with the macronutrients. Well, that's what we're going to do today. Before you can make anything remotely resembling an intelligent decision about what to eat and how to eat, the very first thing you need to know is what the macronutrients are. Think of these as the three basic categories, like the ABCs of nutrition. This is the first thing you need to know, that the three primary types of nutrients are proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. What they are, why they're important to you, why they matter to your health, and how to understand what food does in your body. This is really important stuff, and we'll try to have a little fun along the way. Okay, fats, protein, and carbs. You don't have to dig very deep into the interwebs to find a lot of differing perspectives and a lot of rather strong opinions and disagreements. You'll also find very quickly that a lot of people want to sell you on their ideas. What that should tell you, of course, just as a simple matter of reason, is that some of the things people are saying is nonsense. They can't all be right. So I'll try to keep things just factual. I definitely have my share of opinions, suspicions, and perspectives, and I'm not even going to try to pretend that I don't. All I can do is try to stay open to different ideas as new information comes up, not get too invested in being right all the time, and try really hard to give you sound information with only one goal in mind, which is to arm you with the information you need to make good decisions. The rest is up to you. Like I said in my intro video, I want to have fun here, and convincing you that I'm right just doesn't sound like fun. All right, let's get to the facts, Max. People have been trying to figure out what's in food all the way back to ancient Greece, when one of those ancient Greek philosophers in ancient Greece, whose name was Galen, decided in the 2nd century AD that food was basically all about supporting what they used to call the 4 humors, which they categorized as black bile, yellow bile, blood, and phlegm. And personally, I don't find that particularly humorous, but it was a different time. They basically believed back then that good health was a matter of keeping those 4 humors in balance, and that different foods could adjust that balance. In their way of looking at a person, for instance, red blood meant good humor and friendliness. Excessive yellow bile was associated with assertiveness and a short temper. Black bile was associated with melancholy, and phlegm was associated with a reserved nature, hence the word phlegmatic. So these humors were also seen as a way to sum up a whole person in general terms, from their personality type to their predisposition to various health challenges. This philosophy is also the origin of some archaic medical techniques like bloodletting. Now, this might seem kind of humorous to us now, but it bears mention that humoral theory was the prevailing basis of nutritional science all the way into the 19th century. Even in medical practice, they were still doing things like bloodletting during the Civil War. Oh, that's right, medieval medical practices and the nutritional advice they dispensed were still very much alive and well in Western culture in the mid-1800s. In fact, oftentimes more alive and well than some of the patients. That's not funny. Anyway, but here's the thing to take away from that. For those 1600 years, we sat pretty comfortable in believing that, we knew everything we needed to know about nutrition. But then along comes a dude named William Prout, an English chemist who in 1827 discovered that the chemical composition of food could be categorized as what he called starches, oily bodies, and albumin. Basically, that was the first iteration of what we still call the macronutrients. What he called starch, we now call carbohydrates. What he called oily bodies are now fats, and the stuff he called albumin was a way of describing protein. So his ideas needed a little tweaking, but he basically had it figured out. He also discovered that our stomachs use hydrochloric acid to break food down, and he figured out some of the basic principles of how atoms are structured. So in short, he was a scientific badass. Not long after, another chemist named Justus von Liebig came up with a similar way of looking at plant nutrition. He figured out that what plants need to grow comes down to three things: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And to this day, when you look at a package of fertilizer at the garden center, it'll list how much of each of those things are in it, known as the NPK, since K is the chemical abbreviation for potassium. Go figure. Well, what these guys had in common, aside from some very cool 19th century sideburns, is that they basically told the world, aha, this is it. What plants need to thrive is NPK. Or similarly, aha, we've got it figured out. What humans need to thrive is protein, fat, and carbs. By any other name, of course. The problem is, in time, it turned out that plants need more than just NPK, and humans need more than just carbs, fats, and protein. But just like Galen's humoral theories, people really went along with these ideas, and folks kind of said, aha, now we know everything we need to know about nutrition. But that boat just did not float, and some of the first people to notice were actual sailors. British sailors had already figured out not long before that on their long sea voyages, they needed to add citrus fruits and sauerkraut to their diets to keep from getting scurvy. They didn't really understand why, but clearly they needed more than just albumin and oily bodies and starch to stay healthy. And by the way, this is the reason that to this day the British are sometimes referred to as limeys, because their ships always had a good supply of limes. One British admiral in particular discovered a good way to get his sailors to get enough lime in their diet. He mixed it with rum. He used to wear a long coat known at the time as a grog, and so his nickname was Old Grog. So this concoction of lime juice and rum became known as grog. And if you drank enough of it, then the next morning you felt, groggy. He was so beloved by his men that two of his sailors, a couple of brothers by the name of Washington, named their estate in his honor. You might have heard of this place that was named after Admiral Vernon, but I digress. Okay, so scientists of the time were really interested in figuring out why limes, oranges, and sauerkraut prevented and also cured scurvy. Other diseases seemed to also be correlated with deficiencies in the diet, like beriberi and rickets and others. And what seemed likely is that there was more to food than just carbs, fats, and protein. By that time, by the way, they had discovered that we needed some minerals, but this is the big story because the guy had such a cool name. A Mr. Kashmir Funk is often credited with discovering certain chemical compounds that in time came to be known as vitamins. In truth, there were a whole lot of scientists working on the problem, so I don't know if Funk really deserves all the credit, and maybe his first name was pronounced something more like Casimir. But let's just go with Kashmir Funk, because I just love that. So pretty soon, the nascent consumer packaged food industry started plastering the word vitamin on as many things as they could. Magazine articles proclaimed various riffs on that old familiar trope, aha, now we know everything we need to know about nutrition. We had the macronutrients, we had minerals, and now we had vitamins. What else could we possibly need? Well, it turns out a lot. We hadn't even begun to learn about phytochemicals and polyphenols and antioxidants, and ironically, that one of the most important things to get in our diet is the stuff that we can't even digest. Fiber. Some people actually consider fiber a macronutrient. Technically, it's the stuff in food that we can't actually absorb, so it's somewhat disputable. It sure is important, though, as we'll later see, but we're drifting off topic a little bit. I just gave you this history because I want you to understand how this stuff progresses and how we humans tend to learn. There's a chance that we will never get to that ultimate aha moment where we truly know everything we need to know about nutrition, and that alone should keep you on your toes about people who claim to know everything, when the truth is that we still don't know everything. But for now, let's get back on topic. Let's start with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are your right now energy. These are the things that your body can quickly turn into the stuff your body turns into fuel. That's ATP for you chemistry types. The short version is that carbohydrates are often categorized as simple carbs and complex carbs. Simple carbs are things that can be quickly turned into sugars like rice, white potato, sweet fruits, white bread, and, well, sugar. Complex carbs are things that can also be easily turned into sugars, but more slowly and require a little more effort from your body. So some examples of complex carbs are broccoli, sweet potatoes, whole grains, and lentils. You might have also heard of something called the glycemic index. The glycemic index is a measurement of how quickly or how slowly your body processes a food. So those are your fast burn carbs like white bread, grape juice, and sugar. Food with lower numbers like legumes and starchy vegetables are sometimes referred to as slow burn carbs. So simple carbs equals fast burn, high glycemic index. Complex carbs means slow burn, low glycemic index. There are two things about carbs that are well known to cause trouble. One is that if you eat too many fast burn carbs, it can throw your insulin out of whack and cause type 2 diabetes, which is a huge problem these days. And we will talk more about that in a later video or 3, but the other problem with carbs is that any carbohydrate your body doesn't use up gets turned into fat. And that's your body's way of storing energy so that it can be used later. So yes, any fat you have on you right now is your body's energy reserves, which might sound useful, but the fact is that we tend to never get around to using it up. So it ends up accumulating around our bellies and more dangerously around our internal organs. Again, we'll go more in depth on that in a later video or 3. But just remember, unused carbs turn into body fat. Carbs that burn faster make our insulin spike, and that's a bad thing. Simple carbs do have their place, though. If you're doing something active like running or cycling or swimming, simple carbs are great because your body uses them up right away. It might be counterintuitive, but if eating something sugary can give you the energy you need to get through a workout, you're actually helping your body lose weight because it allows you to get more exercise. Sometimes people who are trying to lose weight make the mistake of not eating the food they need to exercise. So all that being said, there is no shortage of controversy when it comes to carbs. Some people claim that they are flat out unnecessary and bad, just bad. The keto diet is founded on the idea that we should eat very, very minimal carbohydrates because that makes our body switch over to burning fat for energy, which is known as ketosis. Now, I'm not going to argue either perspective for now, maybe later. But right or wrong, carbohydrates have long been recognized as one of the 3 macronutrients. And as is the case with all 3, some people dispute how much we need. Okay, so what about fat? Well, fat, also known sometimes as lipids, though that's a bit of an oversimplification. Lipids or lipid compounds are essential to a lot of your body's processes. Your cell walls are made of lipids. They are absolutely essential to the absorption of energy. They are your body's long-term energy storage. And inasmuch as I said I was going to try to keep my opinions to a minimum in this video, I will say this much. Fats are really important. It's a long story, but over the last several decades, the conventional message we got is that fat is bad. Fat causes heart disease. Fat makes you fat. Well, first of all, your body needs fat for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is being that cells simply can't work without it. Secondly, it's important to know that not all fats are the same. Now, this can get complicated, so it'll also definitely have to be its own video or 3. But for now, let's point out that omega-3 fats, like those found in fish and flax and hemp and walnuts, are really, really, really good for you. Trans fats, like what you find in margarine and most restaurant fryers, are really, really basically just poison. Now, sometimes you see it called partially hydrogenated oil or trans fatty acids, but by any other name, avoid trans fats as much as you possibly can. They have absolutely no place in a healthy diet. Here's another thing to know about fat. Eating fat does not make you fat. The fat in your body comes from unused carbs and protein. Also, the most unhealthy fat is visceral fat, that is, the fat around your organ. That's why some people can look thin enough but still have an unhealthy amount of fat. A person who looks thin but eats like crap is a good candidate for visceral fat. So just because you can fit into your 30-inch jeans does not mean you're healthy. Healthy sources of fat are fish, nuts, avocado, olive oil, and seeds like hemp, flax, and chia. Beware of canola oil. It's a trick. Raw canola oil is pretty healthy, but I promise you have never seen this stuff, and your grocery store does not carry it. Raw canola oil, properly called rapeseed oil, but the food industry decided that they needed to change that name. It's bitter and gummy and stinky. So they subject it to high heat, deodorizing agents, and degumming agents. The final product that you buy at the grocery store is pro-inflammatory, might contain trans fatty acids, and has been linked to some pretty bad health problems. Now, the industry is very anxious to sell you on the notion that it's a healthy food, but it's kind of not. Healthy oils might seem expensive, but if you use a sensible amount of oil in your cooking, it's not that costly. Certainly not as costly as serious health problems. Okay, finally, protein. Protein is important, and nobody disputes that. But its importance might be a little overstated. For much of the 20th century, it was basically the gold standard when determining whether various populations had access to nutritious food. Relief organizations like UNICEF often describe various places as having X amount of protein per person, but that's just too simple. Your body needs more than protein. The big question everybody is arguing about lately is as to how much. Now, some vegans will tell you that most Americans get way too much protein, but bodybuilders will tell you that we get way too little. Some people say that there's no health risk in getting too much. Some people will say that all protein is the same. Again, we'll need to devote at least one whole video or 3 to protein because it is such a charged subject. But for now, let's talk about just what it is and what it does. Protein is the basic building block of your body. Your muscles are mainly protein. Your hair and nails are protein. Much of your tissue is protein. You definitely need it. Proteins are some of the most complicated compounds on Earth. Properly named, protein is a collection of amino acids, 20 to be exact. Your body is able to manufacture 11 of them from carbs and fats and nitrogen, but the other 9 are known as, you might have heard of this, the essential amino acids. The essential aminos are the ones that your body can only get from eating them directly. Now, animal flesh has all 9, and so sometimes people say that meat has a complete protein. Some people claim that plants don't have all 9, but technically speaking, that's kind of incorrect. All plant foods have all 9 essential aminos. It's just that they have some of those aminos in such low amounts that they're often regarded as just not having them. Again, it's controversial. If your only source of protein is beans, then you're probably not going to have enough of the amino methionine. But of course, nobody eats just beans, but yeah, we'll get into this later. Some plants do have sufficient complete proteins, quinoa, hemp, and soy, for instance, and that's why tofu is so popular with vegans. The thing is, if you eat a wide variety of plants, which you should anyway, you will most likely end up getting all the essential aminos you need, and yeah, but sorry, more on that later in another video or 3. But for now, suffice to say that there are and have been some very large vegans, such as elephants, horses, cattle, and brontosauruses. They get pretty bulked up without any steak in their diets. As for how much, that's just about equally controversial. I'm in the school that says about 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. I'm roughly 150 pounds, so that comes up to about 30 grams per day. Now, I can practically hear all the bodybuilders out there having conniption fits, screaming that we need at least 80 to 150 grams per day, and it's pretty obvious that I'm no bodybuilder. But the fact is that people can and have successfully bulked up using the 0.8 grams per kilo intake of protein. A lot of very well-conducted studies show that any more than that just gets passed out through the urine anyway, or worse yet, converted to fat. Now, I do want to reiterate that everybody's body is different, so if you've found something that works well for you, then by all means do that. One of the things with nutritional studies is that they look at the average, what's known as the EAR. No, not this EAR. EAR means estimated average requirement. If the average person needs 0.8 grams per kilo, that means for 49% of people that'll be too much, and for another 49% of them that'll be too little. They never seem to mention that, do they? Anyway, suffice to say, the last thing I need to do is tick off all the bodybuilders. That would just be unwise. So by all means, have fun with your protein shakes. Far be it from me. I mentioned that some people include fiber as a macronutrient, but I don't know. Fiber is comprised of all the stuff your body doesn't absorb, like cellulose. So ironically, the part of your food that you can't absorb is some of the most important. It has a lot of important functions, such as keeping your poop healthy and slowing the digestion of sugars. But what might be the most important function of fiber is that it provides a habitat for all the little microbes that live in your body, aka your gut biome, and that is one of the most important keys to your health. In fact, if you'd like to see an entire episode on the gut biome, just write it in the comments. The first person to write, "I like happy bugs," in the comments will get this Eat Is Love mug, suitable not only for putting things in, but also for taking things out of. See how that works? I can put something in here, and then when I need it, I can take it out. You can also make your voice sound like this. It works equally well for solids or liquids. Okay, but for now, it's time to wrap up this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Ciao.